for every spiritual counterfeit, there is a true. Want to find out more? I recently visited a exhibit in Paris about counterfeiting, not just of money. It was interesting. It was a really great exhibit, but it was also about pieces that bore the sovereign's face, including art, literally false images of the sovereign. And this exhibit did a fabulous job of unpacking how counterfeiting is actually used more as a tool of anarchy, destabilizing more than just creating temporary value for counterfeiting. In other words, it's not really about getting wealth, it's about trying to tear down a reign that you don't like. And counterfeits are designed to destabilize not just the currency of a nation, but the entire kingdom. And as I walked out of there, I just kind of was like, Jesus, this feels really familiar to me. Because counterfeiting in the spiritual realm is the same thing, with the same point: destabilization. Maybe you've run across a counterfeit prophetic word, a counterfeit spirit, a counterfeit angel, a fake Jesus, and the experience that you had wasn't necessarily a devalue of the real, but it was a feeling of being destabilized. Fakes only destabilize one thing: trust. Trust in the goodness of God, in what's real and what's true. It destabilizes the feeling of trust that God can speak to you and that you can hear clearly, and in the goodness of God, that God could protect you. And it destabilizes the fear of, that there is a real. Because for every fake, there is first a real, and the real is so much better. But in the wake of counterfeit destabilization, when the bogus prophetic word has fallen, when the spiritual experience turns out it was not as you thought it was, there is something that can come in even more deeply if you let it. And that's a foundational trust. When you realize that maybe there was a fake prophetic word that you got that wasn't real. Maybe there was a counterfeit. Maybe there was something that wasn't quite right. But you only know that it wasn't quite right because there is a true. There is a true that will not disappoint and that will reveal every false thing. And the real isn't just a prophetic word or a cool spiritual experience. It's the Son. It's the image. I love Colossians 1. As you probably know if you've been here for a while. It says, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, whether things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. The Son is the original image that everything counterfeit is trying to replace. And the Son is the image that is worth beholding. And so if you had an experience that just doesn't look like Jesus, or if you had something that you thought was Jesus and it turns out it wasn't, that only means that there's a true that the real image longs to give you, and you're going to know it so much better. For every fake, there is a true in the spiritual realm, and I believe it's worth seeking out. I'm Mary. I have been spending the last 30 years looking in the spiritual realm for insight But Jesus is still the only face that I recognize in a crowd. I write and I speak and I teach on the spiritual realm and on discernment and recognizing Jesus in a crowd. I have some online courses that go a little bit more in depth than we can get into on a YouTube comment section. And I also have a free Substack, which is linked below. But mostly, if you enjoyed this and you're interested in learning more about discerning spiritual counterfeits, keep watching. I've got a little bit more for you.